Okay, councillors, good evening and welcome to the extraordinary meeting of the council as a trustee of Sandwich Tollbridge Fund. I hope you have the agenda in front of you. Item number 1 is apologies for absence received, please, Town Clerk.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Pennington has a travel commitment, Councillor Gray a personal commitment, and Councillor Daniel Carter a personal commitment.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest, and this is to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of the business to be transacted on this agenda. Do we have any declarations at all? That's a nil return on that one. Thank you, Town Clerk. Item number 3 is public participation. 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at this meeting in respect of the business on the agenda and other matters if time permits. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic to be addressed, must be given to the Town Clerk prior to noon on the day of the meeting. Do we have any participation?
No request, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Item number 4 is the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund and Guildhall budgets for 2025-2026. Trustees are to receive and consider the proposed Sandwich Tollbridge Fund and Guildhall budgets for 2025 and 2026 as recommended already by the Finance Committee, and this is attachment number 1. So I will open the floor for any discussion or considerations on this budget. I would like to lead on those discussions to say that I've been in conversation with several prominent people from the town and also several councillors, and to tell you the truth, the idea of not putting up any grant funding whatsoever this year could be quite a disastrous recommendation. And we need to remember that not all organisations have the ability to create any income or revenue. So to take, for instance, a very sterling and excellent organisation such as Sandwich in Bloom. Sandwich in Bloom is run by very dedicated volunteers who make our town a much better place every year. Sandwich in Bloom has got no ability to make any income or revenue or have any other funding whatsoever. It's not something you can get grant funding on. Quite often grants are for one-off projects, and Sandwich in Bloom is an ongoing matter that needs funding. So for people like Sandwich in Bloom, there basically isn't really very many or any option for their funding. So what I would like to suggest tonight, and this will be up for discussion, is that perhaps this year, beginning in April, would be a smaller fund for grants put forward into this budget, and then possibly a review later in the year. I would suggest, say, September, on the income coming in to the Tollbridge Fund as to whether we could extend the grants or increase them in any way or form. So I would like to throw that out there as an amendment to what you have in front of you tonight. I'll start off with Councillor Marie, and then I've got Councillor Tuper and Councillor Black. Again, no need to stand.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with what you just said. Everything you said. The Maddox Fund is still not operational yet. You cannot take away funding for people, organisations and charities in the town that desperately need their funding. You have such as at the Sandwich Pantry, you have AIDS Concern, you have obviously, as you said, Sandwich in Bloom, and you also have the events in the town that desperately require some money because they have no funding. It's a non-profit organisation. I do feel for your amendment, I would second your amendment. However, I would change it slightly. So I would say that you stick to the last year's budget regarding the funding from the Tollbridge Fund. When the Maddox Trust is coming into operation and it's fully working, then you take that away and everything transfers over to the Maddox Fund, and that's what Georgina Maddox would like. That's what she would have wanted for the town, to boost the town, boost the town's tourism, boost the town's events that she was very heavily into at the time as well. So I would second your motion with that amendment.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Councillor Marie. Councillor Chuka next.
So I prefer to leave the Georgina Maddox fund and the charity aside because we haven't yet agreed how it will operate. So I think it's sort of preempting that particular opportunity. In terms of the budget, just sort of broad brush around this, because we did talk about it in detail in the STBF Finance Committee. The fund that we have at the moment has roughly, so I'll keep it really simple in terms of figures, it roughly has £2 million invested. It brings in circa 50k a year. Inflation for the next year is in excess of 2% estimated. We also have a drawdown identified of 45,000. So they're the figures. That's what we're working on at the moment. So in effect, there is no capacity for any grants. And if you look at the terms of the STBF charity, it's very clear about what is the priority of the assets owned by the charity, and then any surplus is then used for grants. Notwithstanding that, I fully support the idea that we need to support a small number of charities or events or activities that happen in the town. So I think we should be a bit more sensible about how we approach this and take the first review point activity is in March of this year. That's when we would, using the process that we've all adopted, we would make awards at that point. Then we would return to it in September. In that window between March and September, we're hoping that we may look to reinvesting the funds elsewhere and hopefully get a greater return. So that's one aspect. Secondly, the performance of the fund itself might spike upwards, which might give greater capacity. Obviously, on the other side is the risk that we might have to spend more. So I would suggest we should be looking at a smaller amount for March, and that maybe we even consider the one or two organisations, Sandwich in Bloom has been mentioned, the one or two priority items that we year on year do reward, and we invite them rather than being open, because if we only agree a small amount, we may get the issue that we had this year, which was we had to dilute the amount available, and we invite to present a business case for an award. So for example, if you take the first half of the year, you could look at say 6k, and then invite maybe 2 or 3 Sandwich in Bloom, Folk and Ale, possibly any of us like Christmas tree lights, maybe ones that want to put in a request for this coming year, and we analyse those with proper presentations and evaluate them. That's where I would be on this, to a far more sensible approach rather than maybe just saying that we'll just put some money aside and open it up to a wide range. And if you look back over the last year and year before, a number of organisations have not come to those grants in any case, but there are some that were certain about need to exist, like Sandwich in Bloom, with an award.
Indeed, thank you very much for that. Yeah, obviously I didn't go into the detail that you've just raised, but that would be the premise on which I was hoping to take forward. So thank you very much for detailing that into a greater amount. Thank you, Councillor Tudor. I think we had Councillor Black and then Councillor Moore.
You suggested a small amount. What small amount are we talking about?
The figure I was looking at was 5,000. I believe the figure that Councillor Chuka's put forward is 6.
This is 3 organisations.
So if you would choose, say, a small handful of organisations that would not cope, would not be able to continue within the next financial year, you could probably clarify that as 3 to 4 organisations. So we would need somewhere in the region of about 1,500 to 2,000 per organisation to enable them to go ahead. I mean, the aspect of this is the outcome could be that come October, November of this year, the Christmas Lights Committee could come to us and say, we're terribly sorry, but we would not be able to put any lights up for November or December. So it's just something that we need to be visionary about and consider ahead of the event. So.
This sounds awfully like Topsy that is going to grow. And I really think, you know, we've had long debates about this. It is a very difficult subject, and we took a very clear view that we would not be doing this. Now we're turning this over. And I'm sorry, that doesn't seem to be the way to do things. You know, we have to make a decision one way or the other. We thought we had made a decision, and now we're about to overturn it for some vague things. Now we're talking 5,000, 6,000. We've also desperately been trying to make sure that the fund doesn't keep basically hemorrhaging. And I don't see anything at the moment which is going to change that. Yeah. So I'm sceptical, to put it mildly.
Indeed. Obviously, Councillor Black, this is a personal recommendation that I'm putting forward, an amendment to the budget here. So what you've got in front of you is what the RFO drafted, which went to the Tollbridge Finance Committee and was agreed. All I'm saying is at this very late stage, I'm throwing out a lifeboat ring to say, do we need to consider, have we considered those handful of organisations that will not continue if we take this away? And I don't believe there was any in-depth discussion into what the contingency would be if we took that away. So I'll move across to Councillor Anderson, thank you.
I'm really reluctant to say this because I very, very strongly, as a resident of Sandwich, appreciate the efforts of Sandwich in Bloom, the Christmas Lights Committee and the Folk and Ale event. However, I do know that there are other sources of funding other than the Tollbridge Fund. For example, Dover District Council and Royal St George's. And I do feel very reluctant, as I say, to say that. But I'm not convinced, knowing that there are those two other sources, that it really would be the end of the road if the Tollbridge Fund did not make grants this year for those three organisations. Admittedly, we are, as representatives of Sandwich residents, the people who most directly benefit and represent the people who most directly benefit from those three events. And Dover District Council is at one remove, and similarly Royal St George's is at least one remove. But I do think that they might be approached and be sympathetic, as I think they have been in the past.
Indeed, thank you for that observation, that's very good. Councillor Breen and then Councillor Morehouse. You can remain seated, actually. I was going to tell Councillor Wilson.
Mr. Mayor. Just to correct some of the figures that Councillor Tucker has made, the dividend investment income that's budgeted for this year is £48,000. And I would draw your attention to that the plan is to take out 65,300 from reserves, and that's without giving a grant, without giving any grants. Indeed. That's the budget that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, indeed.
And as Councillor Tucker rightly said, the average kind of value of the portfolio is about 2 million, and it's stayed about 2 million over the years. Yeah. I've looked at it, and in the last 10 years, the transfer from reserves is 1,070,000. And over the past 10 years, inflation has run at 55% over those 10 years. So the value of this fund is collapsing, and we made a decision, we're not going to give any grants this year. And I think we should stick by that decision. If the council makes the decision, we shouldn't go back changing it. Earlier this evening, I drew your attention to the fact that there is over £80,000 contingency in Sandwich Town Council's budget. Now, some of these events were instigated by Sandwich Town Council, as far as I know, and in my line of thinking, the Toll Bridge Fund has bailed out Sandwich Town Council over many years. Now it's time for Sandwich Town Council to do the decent thing while the Georgina Maddox fund it becomes operational. Because remember, the Georgina Maddox fund is directed towards the community organisations, groups and other good causes. So that money is not Sandwich Town Council, it belongs to these community and groups. And we should have the Maddox operational. I've asked the town clerk to help with arranging a meeting of the management committee, and before Christmas the incorporation document was approved and it's gone to our consultants for submission to the Charity Commission. So I think we're relatively close to getting operational. We do need to get a wiggle on, as we used to say, but nevertheless that can be done, and I think in the interim Sandwich Town Council should stump up whether it's 5, 10 or 15,000 quid, so that these local organisations are not penny pinched. They do good stuff for the town, and some of them were instigated for the town. So I support these organisations receiving money. Earlier we've just approved in the budget £3,000 for the VE Day. Why can't we approve £3,000 for Sandwich in Blue? Rest my case.
Indeed. Thank you very much for those opinions. Thank you there. Councillor Morehouse and then Councillor Wiles.
Could I ask what the timescale is for the incorporation of the new charity, the Maddox charity? And when are you going to be up and running?
Town clerk.
So the registration is likely to take up to 8 weeks. Obviously, it depends on how many people are trying to register at once, but I've been told it's normally between 6 and 8 weeks.
Okay, so if that's the case, I mean, surely the consensus is that in the longer term, the Maddox charity will replace what traditionally the Tollbridge Fund has done. Because as Councillor Shuker said, the priority for the Tollbridge Fund is first and foremost the assets within the fund, not to subsidise groups or the council running itself, etc., etc. So if we can agree that the Maddox Fund from April onwards can be in a position to start making grant funding to these local groups, then surely that's the solution.
If that is a timely solution and you consider that so, then obviously that would be down to yourselves to...
If there's any short delay to that, the town council could step in and use some of the contingency funds that it's got.
Indeed. It's something to reconsider, isn't it, really? It's just some of these organisations, such as Sandwich and Bloom, would need to, they start from Easter onwards. So it'd just be...
I can see the point that's being made, because reputationally it looks like we're feathering our own nest before thinking about these other organisations, and they do play a critical part in the Sandwich community and its life and its vitality. So if we can find an interim arrangement, if it is from March onwards when we have to think about applications, but if the new charity could be up and running by, let's say, the middle of March, early April, then surely it can take on this role.
If that's possible, that's true. Councillor Black and Councillor Morehouse?
Yeah, well, I would put forward a proposal that we don't take anything out of the Tollbridge Fund this year, as we agreed before, but that we, Sandwich Town Council, and we can't really quite how you're going to balance the logistics of that and the decision on that, it should come from Sandwich Town Council. I would support something like that from Sandwich Town Council, and then for Maddox to decide what he wants to do. If it chooses to take over those grants, that's a matter for them. But as we're not really in a position, but I think this council should, although it's not part of this meeting, so technically, whether we have to very rapidly reconvene in about 6 minutes' time as the town council, I'd be happy to do that. But I'm very reluctant to take more money out of the Tollbridge Fund for all of the reasons that Councillor Green has expressed. It's hemorrhaging. We agreed to stop the hemorrhage.
We don't need to alter the budget. The budget is there in the Sandwich Town Council. We just
Yeah,
need
exactly.
to bring forward a
Use the-
paper to expend the contingency.
It's
If
just,
that's the way to do it, yes.
if that is the way to do that. So, Town Clerk, could I just ask you your questions on grants from Sandwich Town Council
Yeah,
as being public funding?
So there's currently no process for grants through the town council, but obviously if that's what you want to do, then there can be a report and a process draft.
But the trouble is, by the time, sorry, Town Clerk, by the time that's done, Maddox is going to be up and running. So it's an emergency in case any organisations or charities within the town need it. Like for instance, Sandwich Pantry, they run every Monday. They feed people that can't afford to buy themselves food. If they need emergency funding to buy food to support those people that they help, how will they get that money? Because if there's a process for the council to start doing some funding and bits and pieces, that's going to take longer than
a paper bringing forward a report coming to a meeting to the finance committee or to the
council.
Could I just have one person speaking at a time, please? Thank you very much for that, Councillor Marie and Councillor Breen. I believe Councillor Morehouse had his hand up.
Yeah, just some background information on the events. I can't provide that for the lights. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, good.
But regarding the Sandwich Festival, that came as a result of a survey done in the late 1980s by the Ellis Warner Partnership, and I still have a copy of that, which recommended that Sandwich had an event, an annual summer event. And from that, councillors Jeff Snower and the late councillor Dick Perry were the protagonists putting together the Sandwich celebration, and then it was such a success it was decided that it would become an annual event. Obviously a lot less, it was very highbrow, the first event. It was considerably reduced, but it was very generic. Lots of things for different types of incomes, age groups, tastes, etc. That was set up by Sandwich Town Council. So I do feel it's important that Sandwich Town Council plays a part, whether it be via STC or via STBF, in maintaining that event. With regards to the Folk and Ale, that was set up in 2011 as a result of concerns about 4 of the town centre pubs. That was the Red Cow, Market Inn, the Fleur de Lis and the New Inn, which are all under threat of closure at the time. And I think this was in the midst of austerity and the pubs were struggling. And the Chamber of Commerce helped set that up, and then it became its own freestanding event, supported in part to a degree by the SCA. So that's a bit of background information on the events. But I feel passionately, it's particularly regarding the festival and the lights, I believe, because I'm sure the lights has also traditionally been supported by STBF, STC.
It has.
That maintains.
Just before I go to the two.
And additionally, with regards to representation, we have insisted on having an STC representative on Folk and Ale, the lights and the festival, courtesy of the fact that those organisations have been given money by STC, STBF.
Indeed, that's correct.
So I do feel it's important that we maintain that support.
That is correct. And I think the thing that you're highlighting, Councillor Morehouse, which is also what I'm highlighting as well is this reduction in volunteers in this town, and there is a massive reduction in volunteers. Both Councillor Morehouse and myself have been on a vast number of events committees and other organisations in this town, and we can actually see them dying away as we speak. And just this weekend I was talking to some new people that are moving into the town, into Strand Street, and one of the things that they said that they liked about the town that made them think about moving into the town was the community culture that we have here and the events throughout the summer. Now that's what they said, that made them spend a large sum of their money to come and live in this town as opposed to Faversham or any of the other sink ports. Now, the Christmas lights is exactly the same. Just to correct Councillor Breen, all the organisations you said about, none of them were actually initiated by Sandwich Town Council, and they're not Sandwich Town Council organisations or committees. So just to bring up to date, this Christmas lights was actually started by a few members of something called Rotaract many years ago, about 30 years ago, and it got a large number of volunteers, and when I handed it over, I believe there was like 12 volunteers putting the lights up, and there was a committee of about 18, and now, not to bring them into the conversation, but Councillor Marie could tell you the situation we're in now, where it's only 3 or 4 people actually putting the Christmas lights up, and the whole thing could literally be on a cliff's edge as to not happening at all. So that's all I'd say. Just some final discussion on this. Councillor Black had his hand up first,
Thank you.
and then I'll come to you, Councillor Franklin.
Well, there's a full STC meeting in 16 days. So I suggested an amendment a few minutes ago, which seems to have dissipated, and I'll restate it, that we decline to create an events or donations budget, whatever we choose to call it, this year from the Tollbridge Fund, but we, as others have suggested, we invite Sandwich Town Council to use some of the reserves, and I would suggest a figure of no more than 5k. If at the end of the time period the Maddox Fund decides it might wish to take some of those over, that's a matter then between Maddox and Sandwich Town Council. But that would be my proposal, that this goes to Sandwich Town Council next meeting, and we arrive at it doesn't need to be a long process, nor do we have to reinvent the wheel, because we basically have all the procedures in place, but it's under a different aegis. That's all it is.
And the legality of
Well, I'm not
the town council isn't able to currently
when the fact we do not do it currently does not mean that it is necessarily unlawful. It's custom and practice. That's what's and what do towns that don't have a Tollbridge Fund do? I'm sure that some of them support organisations like this. So that suggests to a layperson it is lawful.
All I'm saying, Councillor Black, is there's very strict financial regulations about the preset money. So any money that comes out of the STC accounts, there are very strict regulations around those. So, Town Clerk, did you?
I'm going to say all you need to do is really have a resolution that you do want a grants budget, and then we need a grants policy, and we need the process by which you're going to actually work that policy and invite applications. And so there is work to be done, and I'm not saying, obviously the RFO as well, we need to look at the financial regulations, but town councils do have grant budgets. That's what you can do.
I'd like to bring in the financial officer responsible for
I just wanted to say that in the same way that we have regulations to do with the Tollbridge Fund grants, we also had an old document listing out all the regulations giving out STC grants up to about 5 years ago. So,
Oh, that's good.
but they were smaller grants and they were more restricted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. So we'll take 3 more questions. So we've got Councillor Franklin, Councillor Morehouse and Councillor Wiles on this one. So.
Yeah, I was going to say I was involved with that August bank holiday, you know, going up ladders, putting the bunting up, you know, it should be a week festivity and it's quite a thing, you know, in its day. But a lot of that funding was, you know, sort of a small town grant, but part of it was private funding as well, you know, from other organisations. The thing about Sandwich in Bloom, I mean, with January, they've got to put their orders in for their plants, haven't they? That's the problem. If they don't get their orders in, they're not going to get the plants, are they? So I don't know if we can act as a guarantor or something for them. I'm not quite sure. But it's very urgently required that they get their orders in, because otherwise, unless that lady at the nursery takes a risk, it's a lot of money. You know, I don't think she should take that risk.
I don't think she should. So Councillor Morehouse and Councillor Chuka's got his hand up. Are you still? And okay, and then 4, just those 4. So Councillor Morehouse, Chuka and Wiles, and then we've got to go to the resolution.
The timescales, you've got almost 12 months to the lights. That does not diminish the fact they still need to be planning. But regarding the other events, the Open Hours in July and the festivals in August, it doesn't give a great difference. We mustn't let ourselves get into a comfort zone here. These organisations need to know what the budgets they're going to be playing with as soon as possible.
Indeed, thank you very much for that. So Councillor Chuka and Councillor Wiles are the last 2.
So that was one of my points, is that we are jumping from one, and it was, and I recognise exactly what Councillor Black says about not wanting to take an amount out of STBF, but the starting point was about trying to address an issue specifically for a very small number of organisations that are not council generated, and the needs, certainly Folkenale already have been asking for a number of months for clarity. Sandwich and Bloom are very clear about the January deadline as well. We could easily get ourselves very caught up in a very complex situation that somebody or some people need to resolve very quickly. And secondly, we also need to make sure that the town clerk has been given some space, I'm not sure enough space, in terms of the impact of this. We've got the idea that maybe a resolution is that then comes behind it. My point was about supporting a very small payment out of a 2 million budget that is shrinking, and I've been very clear that it is shrinking, but this is not going to sink the vote this year. And things may improve as the year moves on regards to the fund. That's our aspiration.
Indeed. Thank you for that. So Councillor Wiles is the last question, but before you go to that, I would ask that Councillor Black brings his proposal to the STC meeting so that it isn't dissipated. You said earlier that your proposal had been dissipated, but
Well,
it can't be voted on here, it needs to be voted on obviously at the town council meeting. So I'd be very pleased if you could bring your proposal to the town council meeting.
I can do that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Black. And then finally to Councillor Wiles before we go to the vote.
I just think this discussion has highlighted the rather complex structures that exist with the council, the 2 charities now. So the Tollbridge Fund, I think, it has become almost conjoined with the town council, like this symbiotic relationship. But the fact is, we are the trustee of that fund and of the new Maddox Fund, and our duty as trustee is purely to the fund. Excuse my French, but we shouldn't give a toss about Sandwich Town Council, because our legal duty is to the fund and protecting the fund and making sure it's administered in accordance with the
Indeed, that's
the founding
correct.
documents.
That is
So, you know, we have to always bear that in mind, that
Indeed.
we're here as the trustee of the fund, not as town councillors.
Indeed. And based on the very robust discussion we've had tonight, I'm quite happy to remove my amendment that I brought forward. I apologise for any discomfort it may have caused anybody to bring that forward, but I just think that it's very important that we have these discussions in the public gaze so that there is a rounded consideration of other groups in this in this town. So I'd like to put forward to you the recommendation that the trustees approve the draft budget of the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund. Do I have a seconder for that at all? In its current gaze without any amendments. So, Councillor Breen seconding, thank you. All those in favour of the current draft budget, please show.
2
And
abstentions.
you've got,
Yeah.
so 2 abstentions.
Sorry, Councillor Tomlins, you voted?
Sorry,
Thank you.
apologise, I was up and down.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, councillors, that has been passed, but thank you very much for the discussion. I think, as Councillor Wiles has summed up quite nicely, I think that's given us a little bit of an idea of where we are with this joint feeling between both the Town Council and the Tollbridge Fund, so thank you for that. Item number 5 is letter of representation for McCabe, Ford and Williams, and this is for trustees to receive and approve the letter of representation for McCabe, Ford and Williams that relates to the preparation of the charity's financial statements for the year ended on the 31st of March 2024. This is attachment number 2. This is rather a formality, but decision is required on this as to accepting this. So could I have a proposer and seconder?
Just a question about the Magna Carta and the Charter of the Forest. There was an article in the Express, I believe, today about Sandwich, which talks about the value of those 2 documents. I won't give the figure because in case anyone's watching.
Indeed,
But,
thank you for that.
I wonder if, are they insured or they're not insured?
Yes, they're part of the insurance. Yes.
But they're not valued.
No.
Okay.
That's
I think they're priceless.
probably the case.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the point, isn't it?
So,
Yeah, it is, can't they? Priceless.
indeed, yeah. But thank you very much for raising that. Were you going to propose the letter of representation?
Yeah, I
Councillor Morris?
support that.
Thank you. And did I have a seconder? Councillor Ripley, I believe. All those in favour of the letter of representation, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous there. Thank you very much. And then, oh, that's it, isn't it? Item number 6 is the date of the next STC as STBF trustee meeting is the 17th of March 2025. And with that, I would like to close this meeting of the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund at 8:50. Thank you very much for your attendance this evening.